Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Happy Earth Month. Hello, everyone. Hello. Today, on Mondays with MaryJade, we are going to learn how to grow our own hemp plants. Yes, we're going to learn how to grow our own hemp plants, everyone. So I'm just waiting on, hello. I'm just waiting on Douglas. Hey, there's Doug. So we're going to learn how to grow our own hemp plants. This is a disclaimer, and I can only speak for the state of New Jersey, that if you do plan on growing your own hemp plants, you do need a license. You have to fill out an application to grow your own hemp plants in New Jersey. Elsewhere, check your local laws and regulations. If you can legally grow cannabis in your state, then some of these tips may apply. All right, so I'm gonna let Doug, my homie Doug, in, and we're gonna get started. I have a couple of questions that people gave me prior to this. It might have worked. It might have not. It did. Hey, hey,
Hey
Doug.
Jade, how's it
Hey.
going?
Good, good. Just smoking some smokable herbs with my hemp.
Which uh I log in under the wrong account? Am I under Shore Grow? My bad. It's I should Oh shit, what's up, Bruce? A lot of people in here. Whatever. Whatever. Oh yeah, no, I'm good. Anyway, so where do we start?
Well, I had, of course, made a disclaimer about
Yes, I
hemp.
heard that. Thank you. Yes.
Um, but really, a few of the questions we had, I think, are like for further down the line. But I want people to understand, like, what are, well, first of all, tell everybody about you, and then I'll formulate my question a little bit better.
Thank you. I mean, that's what I should have done. Hello, everyone. My name is Doug Lander. I'm one of the owners of Shore Grow Hydro. We are New Jersey's highest rated grow shop. We're located on Route 35, right across from Wegmans, north of the Asbury Circle. We are currently expanding, so 417, the Saturday before 420, from 3 to 6 p.m., we are going to have live music, fresh food, and a lot of local vendors. Will you be joining us, Jade?
I could hear
417, 3
you.
to 6 p.m. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's like the signal. Are you on Wi-Fi or something?
I may be.
This happened last week too. I just might, it might be me.
I think that made it worse. Let me 1 second.
This is why we do lives. You got to just roll with it. You got to roll with
Sh-
it.
Shucks, yeah. So. Yeah, we have that event coming up, and if you can make it out, Jade, I would love for you to set up a booth. Um, but yeah, so pertaining to growing, we do free monthly classes the last Thursday of the month. Um, every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. we go live on IG. It's something called the Grower Circle Session. So it's a great place to learn. If you have any questions throughout the week that you've come across in your garden, you can ask them to not only myself, but other people on the live stream as well.
Awesome. Awesome. And I just want to interject that uh, Doug and I had taught a class together. So, you know, we have experience both teaching individuals, you know, about how to be in the space here, and also my greenhouse of my regular fruits, veg, and flowers, like my babies, also very helpful for that as well. So it doesn't have to be strictly questions about plant medicine, if we want to call it that,
Absolutely.
but actual produce as well. So all those types of questions are welcome. I don't know much. I just wing it. But I think the first start would be like people, if they do have seeds, like what are you even looking for if you have a seed to start growing your own hemp plant?
So if you've come across seeds on your own, they are viable and capable of being grown. You just have to keep in mind a couple things. Um, if you are finding those seeds, let's just say you find them in a bag, um, those genetics are going to not be as strong, one, as if you had purchased them from a reputable breeder. Um, and they're also not going to be male or female. I mean, I'm sorry, they are going to be either male or female because they were not feminized like most seeds that you would purchase. So if you do intend on any popping any seeds that you find, be very cautious when it comes to the point in the plant's life when you were to flip what we call flip the lights. That would be from a 18:6 vegetative light cycle indoors to a 12:12 fruiting and flowering light cycle, which is 12 hours on and 12 hours off. So when you do that to your plant is when that plant will then identify and show you its sex, whether it's male or female. And that's something that's very important if you don't have feminized seeds, or even if you do have feminized seeds, because it's a good practice to have. But number one would be properly identifying the sex of the seed that you're growing, so that way you can determine, uh, let's say if it's a male, you're most likely just going to want to get rid of it because males will just pollinate females and then females will make less flowers and they'll make more seed, which is not necessarily what most home growers are looking for.
Just to interrupt, so just to clarify for everyone, the female plant is the fruit. That's what everybody's searching for, correct? Female.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, that's what he means by feminized. It has to be, you know, in this case, you know, men are useless, and I've been dying to say that.
And, you know, just taking it, the reason why I emphasize that if you come across bag seed, it's not going to be as stable or reliable as if you purchased it, very likely because the grower was not intending to have seed in that flower. So that flower was not grown to produce seed. Instead, it was grown to produce flowers, and then yes, some of the energy got taken away from the flowers and devoted to seed. Um, so that's another big reason why the two are different. Now, people have gotten very lucky with bag seed and come across some wonderful genetics, and it happens. But in the same token or in the same breath, don't be surprised if you pop 10 bag seeds and only one of them actually germinates. Because that's not uncommon either. It's kind of like rolling the dice with um, bag seed, and let's just call it hermaphrodite seed because that's really what wound up happening. The grower was growing the plant got under a certain amount of stress, and the plant at one point or the other thought it was going to die. So what the plant starts doing then, because it's amazing, is start making its own seed to pass on its genetics and survive through the next season to the next year. So that's if you ever find seed in there, that's why. Not a lot of people are really aware of that. Is because something really kind of didn't go just right at the grow. And sometimes you have, well, I'll stop emphasizing that now, but let's move on to the next question. I could talk all day about like one topic.
That's what people want, though. That's what people want. So, like, So we're starting from the seed, right? How long is it going to take to form to anything? Are we just popping that right in the soil and just leaving it? Like what should we expect? I know when I had a seed, it was I had to wrap it in a paper towel and keep it hidden somewhere and then wait for it to like get the tap root. And I didn't know what any of that meant. So I was just like, okay, once it looks different, I know it's ready.
Hells yeah. Fortunately, there's like 4 or 5 common methods. You explain the paper towel trick. There's throwing them in soil. And I would say that the third most common would be either a starter plug or a peat plug, rock wool, some sort of little plug to start the seedling in. And my best advice would be to either DIY your own clone dome or get a propagation station where you've got like a little first, you've got a bottom tray that holds some water. Then you have a tray that you put in that, which holds the cubes for you, holds your cubes up straight and true. You put the seed inside the cube, and then you put a propagation dome on top of that, slap a heating mat underneath there. And what we're doing is we're stimulating the spring by having this propagation dome, where one, we're going to make it warm with the heating mat, and two, we're going to make it really moist with that humidity dome, keeping the humidity in there and keeping the relative humidity high. If you think about the spring, seeds that lay dormant in the soil all winter are waiting for those two things to happen. Everything to get moist, May showers, brings April flowers kind of context, gets moist, it gets warm, and then I noticed about 2 or 3 days ago, all the weeds and the dumpster, all the weeds and the grass underneath the dumpster at our shop was starting to germinate and pop up. And I was like, hallelujah, spring, we're so much closer. But yeah, that's what we're stimulating. We're stimulating that seed to be like, hey, little guy, wake up. It's time to go. And then you would imagine, to answer your question, Jade, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks in the vegetative stage, where you've got a relatively small pot and the plant's going, from 6 to 12 inches tall to about 1 foot. Could be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, depending on your level and your the variety that you're using of seed. And then you would initiate that 12-12, like we discussed, to stimulate the fruiting and flowering and allow the plants to finish out the second major part of their life. Which to them, they see, as we kind of mentioned with the seed, it's just a means for them to reproduce.
Now, does this
So the female makes a flower.
oh, I was gonna say,
Go
does this
ahead.
apply to autoflower? Like, what's the difference between what autoflower is and what you're describing?
That's a good question. Autoflowers are really interesting and they're relatively new, but they will automatically flip. I was using the flip term when you go to 12-12. So typically autoflowers only have about 4 weeks to go through their vegetative cycle. Um, Interestingly enough, with photoperiods, which are the opposite of autoflowers, you really you're like, yeah, the veg stage, whatever. If I fuck it up, I'll just lose a week and I'll continue to grow and grow. I'll make it up. It's fine. Um, and then you kind of really you hone in on the flower stage with photo periods. You do it really carefully because you want to give them exactly what they're looking for, so that to ensure the largest flowers. However, with auto flowers, it's kind of vice versa, because the veg stage is like super more important with them because you only have 4 weeks. So let's say you're a newer grower and you pop an autoflower and you have a really hard time the first 2 weeks. So your plant only winds up growing, let's just say 8 inches tall. So there's only so many leaves or foliage or fan leaves, I guess we can call them. And there's only so much roots that the plant were able to grow within those 2 weeks. And the plant needs those roots and fan leaves in order to photosynthesize. So let's say your autoflower is 6 inches tall. You might get like a half ounce of biomass hemp, whatever.
Hmm.
If your autoflower winds up being 2.5 feet tall, well, now the plant has more foliage to photosynthesize, more roots to absorb the water and nutrients, so the plant will be able to absorb and thus yield much more. Um, so yes, autoflowers, you really want to focus on those first 4 weeks because they're going to determine your end yield more than anything.
Mm, okay. Now, let's away from autoflower just because not everybody's going to have, access to that. But when we're just throwing it in the soil or, getting them started, we're getting our seedlings, like, are we using nutrients? What kind of nutrients should we be looking for? How are we testing it? What are those kinds of things that we should be, you know, mindful of?
You pretty much have two options at this point. You can grow hydroponically with water, and a lot of people that grow hydroponically in water will use synthetic nutrients, which is not I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing at this point. Or the other path would be a soil and or organic style grow. I will tell everybody watching right now that it's mostly a personal preference. um, some people enjoy growing with soil more than water. The only other thing that really is affected by this decision is if you grow soil organic, the quality of the end result is going to be very, very, very good. Long story short, paraphrasing, plants have evolved with organic nutrients for billions of years. They have a very good chemistry and electrical relationship. When you start talking hydroponics over here, now you're talking about your yield being very, very large. So ultimately, it's a yield or a quality soil organic or a higher yield and lower quality hydroponic. And when I say yield, I mean end result in actual weight. Because they are two different focuses, even when you're breeding the plants, not even growing them. There are very few genetics that have both up here, and they are very, very expensive, and they're commercially used. It's hard to even get your hands on them. And for beginners, trying to do both at once is not easy. So I would suggest, depending on your concerns, going that path. So if you go soil, your best bet is to buy a bag of ocean forest from Fox Farm. It's the same soil that hippies have been using for 40 years. And it's the most commonly used. So if you need advice and you can't get in touch with us at Show or Grow, you can Google, hey, Fox Farms Ocean Forest, and you will find ample information about how to proceed, how to help your plants, or deal with certain problems. And if you do that, keep in mind, ocean forest is a hot soil. That means it's got a lot of nutrients. So to answer your question, Jade, let's say you start in that little plug, you go in there for about a week, the little baby's little 4 to 6 inches tall, looking cute and adorable. Then you could put that into a 1 or 3 gallon pot of ocean forest from Fox Farm potting soil. And then you would have about 1 to 3 gallons of nutrients already in that soil. So this is a very common mistake when people when they start growing, they'll put a plant in soil and then they'll add extra nutrients. You do not need to add nutrients until you deplete that nutrients in the soil. If you do add too much nutrients with fresh, hot soil, the plant will see the typical newt burn. A lot of times the plants will bounce back, so if you do it, don't freak out. But my advice would be go very light on the nutrients in the first 4 weeks if you're using soil. Now, if you're using hydroponics, you're going to have to be putting that nutrients in the water, and you will be swapping your reservoir out once a week with fresh water, fresh nutrients, and that's mostly it with hydroponics.
Okay. And the thing that maybe you could clarify this a little bit better, but like the way that I understand hydroponics and just from like literal fruits and veg is like the reason why you're using these nutrients and that is like also to impart like the flavor, like the
I guess actual nutrients, like
Yeah.
what
Oh yeah.
the body of the plant, like the actual essence of the plant itself is that's why you're using those. Because I know I've seen things like that are a little bit more like they sound like candy almost, or like in the names and stuff. Like, and I never could figure out. Like, I'm like, what the hell? Why would you add juicy fruit to to your plant? You know?
It's a yes, yes, and kind of touching up. I feel like the difference between hydroponic and soil growers, it's a very personal thing. Like I used to be a hydroponic grower for a very long time because I tend to be very analytical. I like numbers. I like my graphs and my sciences and all that jazz. However, it got to a point where a lot of the customers were growing soil, so I kind of switched over, and it's more like, it's more of a hands or an eyeball reading the plant kind of thing. You're kind of sitting back and you're saying the soil is going to take care of the plant, especially once you get into those living soils and all the people doing that kind of that newer potting soil blends out there. You're taking care of the soil, and the soil's really taking care of the plant. And that I think would help a lot of newbies as well. I'll tell you, it's when you first start growing, it's so exciting. You're getting in there, you're in there every day, and a lot of times people wind up doing a little bit more harm than good just because they're so excited. And please, I was there myself. I remember, I actually one of our newer customers, he actually told me the other day he locked his tent so that way like he wouldn't get in there finicking all the time. But it's like I get it. It's to anybody that has not started, it's an absolute rabbit hole, and I will warn you right now. I mean, it's a phenomenal experience. Plant therapy is something that's hard to accumulate with words, honestly. So, but anyway, so yes, going back to hydroponics and what part two, and what I was trying to say, um, when you look at commercial growers in the context of what you're talking about, Jade, with additives and nutrients and putting them in at certain times to stimulate certain results, a lot of commercial growers, they might have like a cocoa core soil-like media, but essentially they're growing hydroponically because there's no real nutrients in that cocoa core. So commercially speaking, it's much safer to mix all your nutrients and know exactly what you're giving your plant, as opposed to a pot full of soil where you're like, maybe the plant ate all the nitrogen already. We don't really know what's exactly in that soil all the time without doing a lot of work and analysis. So in that context, hydroponic, when you're a commercial farmer, you're taking the water from the main line and you're stripping it. You're filtering it till it's like, in a sense, almost pure distilled water, but not pure distilled water because plants do not like pure distilled water. Anybody watching at home, I get that one a lot. Plants, they do not experience distilled in nature. So anyway, they strip everything out of the plant, out of the water, and then they put exactly what they want to get those stimulated results. Typically when it comes down to the additives, you've got your sugars, your bulking agents, which are going to help the plant flower get bigger and fatter and denser. You've got your ripening agents, which come in at the end of the flower. Those are going to cause the flowers to push all that ooze like they like to do in the last 2 weeks. So some of them are hormonal stimulants. Some of them are more kind of nutrient nutrient stimulants, like i.e., when you go from the first vegetative stage to the fruiting and flowering stage, typically you pull down on nitrogen because nitrogen is responsible for leafy green growth. Oh man, I have not been scrolling up this whole time. I hope nobody has questions.
No, you're good.
Oh yeah, nitrogen is responsible for leafy green growth, like the foliage itself. And when you start stimulating the plants to flower, you don't want to be stimulating the grow leafy green at the same time, because then some of that energy is going to go towards growing more foliage, which means your yield in the flowers is ultimately going to be lower. So there are a lot of nuances when you start talking the micro and the macronutrients and certain additives that stimulate the plants. And that's why, and it's constantly evolving. I mean, what the best products were 2 years ago are not the best products today. I think that's one of the reasons why the weekly sesh goes so well, is because we're always talking about new products and really trying to figure out, like, does it really help? Like, does it though? You know, or is it worth the value that it costs?
Yeah,
So
because you
yeah.
don't want to what you just put all this like hard, I just remember like I had a plant and I slept outside with it a couple of times because I just wasn't, I didn't trust, I didn't trust nature to take care of it. I had to step in and be Mother Nature for a moment. So it's like there's definitely, it's okay to make mistakes, especially if this is your first time around. And I have this issue with like, if you've noticed, I strategically made sure like none of my plants are in the shot because I have a problem with overwatering. Um, so how often should you be watering your hemp plants?
When the media dries out is ultimately going to be the best answer. As they grow through different stages, they get thirstier and thirstier. So it's always kind of changing. Ultimately, the bigger the plant gets, the thirstier it is. So once you go into a soil pot, my best advice would be to water that pot completely. Let's say you're bumping up from that little soil plug, you're going to go into a 1 gal. Put all the soil in, backfill, put the little baby in there, water the pot completely till you start to see runoff. That's going to tell you that all the soil is in fact saturated. And then what you'll do is you'll just wait. You'll give it a couple days, and every day you go in there, you lift that pot, and you'll feel it get lighter and lighter. And eventually it'll get to a point where it's almost like so light, you're like, what the fuck? How are you even happy and perky and stuff?
Yeah.
And then if you're a new grower and you're in there all the time, I would even say get to the point where you see it start to wilt a little bit and then lift it, because that right there is your telltale sign. Okay, I know it's dry, and I know it's just starting to wilt a little bit. So that's the perfect time. And I mention that because if you overwater, the plant will wilt. If you underwater, the plant will wilt. It throws a lot of beginners. It threw me off when I transferred to soil a couple of years ago. It was like the worst grow I had in years. And I was like, I can't even share this. This didn't come from me. No, no, no. So yeah, I feel the soil people pain. But yes, ultimately when the media dries out and you lift the pot for a few weeks, and this is the best part, is after a long time, your muscle memory will get so comfortable with that. Oh, this is a dry spot. You can close your eyes and just lift it, and you'll know. Okay, she's thirsty. So yeah, hex yes.
What is the name of and I don't know if it would even apply I'm pretty sure it does. Was it Bloom,
Blue
the thing with
mats.
the, yes, yes. Could
Yes.
they use something essentially like that? Or could you explain that a little bit more? Nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. If you're curious and you want the breakdown, I think I talked about it for like 45 minutes on our IGTV. It's called the grower, no, the beginner's family recipe. It's one of the titles of our IGTV session. And pretty much the core concept of that is using what Jade's referring to, the blue mats. It's an automatic watering system, but it's very individual. It's pressure based and gravity based. It does not involve timers and valves and this and that. It's very cool. And in concept, what it does is it's going to water the plant better than you or I or any horticultural expert could. Because what the Blue Mat system does is it constantly maintains a certain amount of moisture naturally, um, which thus keeps the soil and the microbes very happy. So if you're using, let's just say, a living soil blend plus the blue mats, what's going to happen is all the microbes and living in the soil are going to be giving the plant all the nutrients it wants, because nothing knows better than what a plant wants than microbes. And then the blue mats are going to be watering the plant depending on how much the plant actually really wants to be watered. Since it's a self-maintaining watering system, if the plant is really thirsty one day and she's like, she wants 1.5 gallons when you would normally be doing like a 1/4 gallon or whatever you think is right. So if she drinks a lot of water, that system is just going to gradually compensate it and bring it right back to where she's happiest. So in that context, like, that's why I say nobody can water better than the system, because if somebody were to, they would literally have to sit there constantly with their finger in the soil, judging the moisture level and compensating, which is not going to happen. No one's going to sit there and do that 24 hours a fucking day. I'm sorry. That's
Maybe
why
in the
these.
beginning of quarantine, though.
Well, yes. So yes, in tandem of a heavy and happy microbe system with a rich nutrient soil and the blue mats, it's why it's called the beginner's family recipe. It's a recipe that we designed with over the course of 3 years with about freaking 20 or 30 beginners, because helping people grow soil was a major focus of ours, because I would say a large majority of our customers are focused on that high quality. They're like, I don't care if I don't have the largest supply. I'm more focused on having the best in hand, kind of sort of thing.
Yes. And just to be clear, you do sell the blue mat at the shop, right?
Yes, the blue mat watering system. Yeah, if you're curious, peep that IGTV, because I really break down the microbes and get into more details. We have done a lot of sessions with blue mats, kind of like we're doing one now. They'll come in to my sesh and they talk about their products. So we have a lot of information on our website. I wrote like a 2 or 3 blog post page, 2 or 3 page blog post about how to install them, maintain them. A customer had brought them to my attention about a year ago. I would say I started running them 8 months ago and I never looked back. It's kind of sad because I don't hand water as much. Now I just do it once a week. But we started getting so busy at the shop that I really didn't have a choice. I didn't have 2 hours every night to spend in my garden like I'd like. So those 2 hours, would become 20 minutes of me popping my head in there. The watering's good, the feeding's good, and I can kind of just sit back and really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I wanted to bring up this question before I forget to ask, but somebody had asked me, now, we're keeping the male away from the female. Like, what about if we have a CBD rich hemp and then something that is higher in other cannabinoids? Should those be kept separate as well?
Ideally, unless your intention is to cross them, and start your own genetics, then yes, because otherwise it's very likely that especially if there's a male and a female across the 2 different species, it's very likely it's going to happen no matter what. And that's how we're able to breed high levels of this and that and this, so on and so forth, because they'll find a male and a female that, maybe it's a mutation, maybe it's like their old pheno, where they have high levels of that, and they'll breed them together, and then the babies will have even higher levels, and so on and so forth. So it kind of gets into, do you intend on breeding? And if you do, hats off to you, because breeding is relatively difficult and expensive. Yes.
I don't even want to get into that here.
Yeah, I don't either. It's a sore subject.
All right,
There's a lot of breeders popping up, and even in New Jersey specifically, and more power to them.
Yeah.
But I would just urge everyone to really be cautious because 10, 15 years ago, I feel like there was 5 or 10 real big breeders because it really sucked breeding. Like only the die hards did it.
Hmm.
So and it's the exact opposite these days. Now it's like anybody with a small, tent is doing it. So my what I am concerned about is that the gene pool for everybody is going to be decreased because of these kind of fly by the night breeders. So when it comes to purchasing your seed, really do some diligence. Um,
Hmm.
and if you have any questions, just ask some growers that are been doing it for longer. And be careful. Oh, here's a great one that we haven't discussed yet, Jade. If you're gonna take in cuts or clones from a friend, be very careful. Or if you're gonna bring plants, let's just say you want to bring like a fruit tree into your environment over the winter, also be very careful because those are the 1 and 2 ways that people either get pests or pathogens in their indoor environment. That's it. Don't
No,
do
that's
it, Mel. Mel Kwan said, he said, just don't do it. I mean, that is literally 100%. It's either one of those two reasons why people get spider mites, powdery mildew, aphids. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so quarantine your cuts. We were
Big.
talking about a propagation dome, like stick them in there for a couple weeks. Because if there are any problems, they should show themselves within a couple weeks.
Yeah, and that is devastating. Like I had the hibiscus and I'm thinking everything's like copacetic with the hibiscus I had. And then I'm like, what are these weird things? And then like it had such a bad aphid, aphid, did I say it
Yeah,
right?
yep, yep,
Yeah,
yeah.
it had such a bad aphid problem. And then that's when I went and got I just want to talk about like IPM for a little bit, but
Hmm.
that's when I got that spray and I had even wrote to you. I was like, yeah, this is working great. And then I saw all these dead bumblebees and it was like heartbreaking. So it's like if you were going to also, if an infestation happens, if something does happen to your plants, like make sure you're using something that you know is also safe for you. Make sure you're using something like maybe organic, organic, ideally. Like that's how I feel about it because as soon as I saw, um, that these bees were dying, I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean for all my fruits and veg I just grew and things like that? Do you have any products you would recommend if that does happen to your plants?
The amazing Dr. Enzymes is my bread and butter right now, just because it's it to my knowledge well, no, bees aren't soft bodied. I gotta think about that. I'm not gonna say that on the live. I gotta think about that. But the Dr. Enzymes, it's not oil based. It's not based off any chemicals, natural or synthetic. Because i.e. chrysanthemum oil is a natural pesticide. It's a chemical that's organically created from chrysanthemum trees. So some products like that are mostly oil based, and then you've got like organism based, and that's pest control products like diatomaceous earth. These are all pretty much organic. What I'm wondering is I'm trying to think. Spinosad. Spinosad's organic. However, if you apply it on a garden during the day, it does hurt bees. And
Hmm.
if you're using spinosad, you can get around that by spraying by night. But ultimately, my answer is going to be the amazing Dr. Enzymes because unlike all those other products we discussed, they're enzyme based. They leave no residual. So let's just say you are doing a high value crop and you get in flower and you get spider mites or powdery mildew. You don't necessarily want to spray a lot of heavy oils, despite they'll fight the powdery mildew and pests, but then there will remain residual on the flower and could be a byproduct and taint the flower in some way or form or the other. So because of that, especially, I love the Dr. Enzymes. It kills pests, it kills their eggs or their larvae, if they're soft-bodied especially, and it will also really make PM have a hard time, powdery mildew. So it works for pathogens as well. So yes, the amazing Dr. Enzymes is my jam.
I use that to kill many what are they? Potato larvae. They ate all my damn plants, and I just would go. They ate no cabbage. They ate all my cabbage. I had to use that to murder them. I murked all of them. So definitely, I will second that.
It works really well as a root drench for anything living in the soil, and it doesn't fuck with the plants at all. Like I don't even, it's enzymes, so I mean I'm no chemist, but it's cool. I mean I've had some guys, oh nice Nico, they've had like mold breakout in the drying room even, and what they did was they would just make a 5 gallon bucket of it, and they would just wash everything with it. And then he hung it up a day later and or a couple of days later sampled it to see if there was any residuals or anything, and he was like it was great. It was so yes. I mean I can't say enough. I'm not suggesting that you wash moldy flour, but I'm just saying, you know,
Yes,
um
you
you could. No, but shit.
do. It's all good.
Anyway,
You
yes,
mentioned
yes.
the drawing room, so let's talk about like harvesting. How long
Mhm.
are we waiting to harvest? And like, this may seem like a stupid question, but we're just chopping it down. What are we doing to actually harvest the plants?
We're gonna wait until the sugars on the plant, they go in the very, I had mentioned a ripening agent for the ripening stage of flowering, which is the very end, when it produces all that good stuff. So essentially, in the last couple of weeks, we'll look at those sugars under microscopes to determine they're going from clear to cloudy to amber. And typically speaking, most people are looking for about 20% amber and then 80% cloudy. And then what you'll do is right around that time is when you'll chop the plant. If you're soil or hydro, you'll flush before this. But it's really important to get it with like your 20% amber, 80% clear. So after you chop, then you'll hang. Ideally, your best case scenario is to hang the plant in an environment that's 60 degrees Fahrenheit and 60% relative humidity. If you can do that, it's very important because above 68 degrees Fahrenheit is when a lot of sugars will even naturally evaporate off the plant. Um, so if you get it to 60 degrees and 60% humidity, typically it'll take anywhere from 5 to 8 days. Um, Around day 4 is when I'll be in there daily, popping my head, and I will be pulling off small branch flower sites, not the large, thick branches. I don't like bending or snapping the large ones because it's very difficult to really get a good idea of how dry the actual flower is from the branch in that concept. So what I'll do is the smaller flower sites, I'll snap one of them off, and typically, if it's wet, it'll have a couple of strings that'll stay attached. So I'll let go of it, it hangs on the plant, whatever. Come back the next day, pull another flower site, maybe from a different branch, and then if it breaks and I don't see any strings holding it to the main branch, then I will know, okay, it's just dry enough. It's time to pull the plant down. I'll put it into mason jars or some kind of airtight container, ideally with a humidistat that's going to measure the humidity. And then pretty much what happens on a perfect dry, or as pretty much as perfect as it gets, I was very fortunate to have this happen recently. You'll put it inside the jar and it'll be around 60% humidity. And that is beautiful because we're just starting to really burp the jars. Once they're in their container, we want to, I guess I'll go back a couple steps for this analogy. When you hang the plant up to dry, you're drying it really quick. You're going from like 100 to 60% ideally in the course of 6 to 8 days. But then when you go into the jar, you want to dry them super fucking slow. So you're only going to burp the jar for like an hour, once a day. So let's say you go into the jar, perfect situation, you're at 60% humidity in the jar. Ideally, you'll be at 50%, I'm sorry, 58% by the end of the month. So for 1 month, you're going to burp very quickly because you're only going from 60 to 58. You would only burp for a few minutes once a day. And when you open the jar, you'll go from 60 and a little bit of humidity will come out. Fresh, dry air goes in there. You close it back up again. And then it's almost like the flowers kind of slowly but surely sweat.
Mm-hmm.
Another way to consider it is when you're drying, while you're hanging, you're drying the outside of the flowers. So there's still going to be some moisture on the inside, even after you take it out of the tent. And that's what we're burping off, that last little bit. We want to do it really slow. And the whole reason why you hold back and go from 60 to 58 over the course of a month, because the plant itself is still ripening inside the jar. You know, a good analogy is like when they harvest the bananas in Brazil, green as fucking grass, and put them in the shipping container for 2 weeks. By the time they get to the shopping marts, they've completely ripened off and they're now much sweeter. So there's like this process where the plant will take harsh tasting chlorophyll, break it down, convert it into sugar, and then ideally more oil. So you're taking something that's rough and grassy tasting, and you're converting it into something smooth and sweet. And that's really what the burping and the ripening process is all about. If you're a new grower, I really emphasize them the first time when you're harvesting, that because it's really exciting putting all those jars together, and you're like, oh my God, look at all this. And it's like make sure you really burp one and ripen one off for at least a month, because most people will harvest and they'll just chew right through it. And it's tough to say like for sure, but typically speaking, after 1 month of ripening, the flavor profile and the smoothness pretty much doubles in quality. Only to my knowledge, I should say, only very, very good soil growers are able to really pull the plant out, and it's really good enough at that point to consume as a beginner. Yes, Cloud9, patience is a virtue, absolutely. So yeah, that's really the whole ripening process and the burping process. That should be.
The only other thing I'm going to ask, and then we're going to wrap it up because we're almost at time, is do you prefer a wet trim, dry trim, and what kind of skizzers do you like to use?
I personally prefer both. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily like I think one is better than the other. To me, it's mostly about saving time. So when I chop the plant down, I will do a wet trim and I'll remove a large variety of the fan leaves, not the sugar leaves, but just the fan leaves. And then I'll do the dry, and after the dry, I'll go back for all the sugar leaves and pretty everything up. I like the Chikasamas, the pretty standard. They're like oh god, yeah, they're red-handled pruners, and they have like a kind of big opening on both sides, and they're like ergonomically pretty comfortable. Curved, I like curved blades because I like to work around the flowers, kind of spin them and prune them. Trim trays are a great product for trimming. They catch everything underneath. Chikamasa, thank you, Cloud9. Yeah, there's a couple reasons why people will do different kind of wet trims and dry trims. If you're a beginner, it's a tough argument, but the old argument was the longer the dry, like if you could get that 6 to 8 days to 12 days by leaving more fan leaves on the plant as like moisture banks, that's kind of was like, that's mostly how they commercially dry and cure. I mean, that's mostly how they commercially dry. Hemp farms, other farms, they all pretty much, because they want to extend that dry. Now, the reason why I got a little sketchy about it was because Crypto Cure has been coming out lately, and they're flash freezing, flash dry, uh, plants really quickly, and they're saying they're getting high profile. So right now, it's kind of like any of the experienced guys. It's kind of like flushing right now. Flushing is all up in the air in the community. You know, unless you're running heavy salts, you really need to flush. But a lot of organic guys are like, what the fuck? I don't need to flush. So that's one of those other things where it's like, depends on who you ask right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so now I think everybody pretty much has the basics down. If they have any more questions, just let them know where to find you and just remind everybody about the event that you're having as well.
Hells yes. We're Sure Grow Hydro, no spaces on IG. That's a great place to contact us. You can call our shop. We're all over Google now. We've been operating for about 4 or 5 years. So we're finally getting that Google clout. Free monthly grow classes, always the last Thursday of the month. You can go on our IG, click the link for all the dates. It's always free. You just show up. You don't have to sign up or anything. It's a great environment to exchange like-minded information at your own discretion. And then we've got the sessions Tuesday night at 8 p.m. and 4:17, the Saturday before 4:20, 3 to 6 p.m. Dubproof, our fucking house band, is going to be playing live reggae. You know Dubproof. You're always at the events. We have, I can't remember the burger spot right now, but they're going to be doing vegan options for burgers and regular options. We're looking at I can't remember their name either. A donut company, which we might be doing vegan options of donuts and regular options. Dude, I'm so fucking amped. You have no idea. Mood Mats is going to come in. They're going to be setting up a booth. They just confirmed. Vegan Hemp Wicks is going to be coming up, setting up a booth. Garden State Hemp is going to be setting up a booth. I know Core Roots is going to be setting up a booth. Dude, I'm sorry.
I actually might have somebody else for you that might. Ooh, I got her. Okay, I'll talk to you off of this, but yes. I might have somebody else for you too.
Hells yes.
That might be good for that. Well, thank you, Doug, for joining us. I hope everybody got something out of this today. And my big announcement is we normally do this every 2 weeks. Next week we're having the Dank Duchess on, and she's going to be teaching hash making. So you learned how to make a plant. Now you're going to hash it out.
Yes. I love you, Jade. Oh, that's awesome.
All right, everybody. I'll see you later. Enjoy your day. Bye. Thanks for joining us, Doug.
Thank you.